Hey, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the Writer's Bookshelf series. We've been doing a structure series lately and I just remembered that I have more structure books. I thought I was done with Save the Cat, but I'm not. I actually have, we're going to cover two books today, only because the second book doesn't really need its own video. It's pretty straightforward, and if I do a video on that, it's going to be 3 minutes long, so I'm just going to put the two together. It's from the same author, so, you know, to get two for the price of one. One thing I'm going to say now, so I don't get lost in the weeds, is that this book has its own supplemental software. You can, again, it's a structure. It's one of those books based on a particular type of structure. And if you get the book, you can get the software with it. And I highly recommend the software. In fact, I recommend the book because I recommend the software. So if you're still with me, if you've been staying with the series this long, we've covered a lot of structural books. This one's my favorite because this one I think it's a little bit in related to what we learned with Story Genius, where you're working on the character and the problem dynamic problems and all that. This particular book it's not even really the book that I'm recommending. It's the style that I'm recommending. The book is honestly, the book, you don't really have to read it, if I'm going to be fully honest. I recommend you read the book, but you can also read the author's website and get as much out of it. Or you can even, go through the program and get as much out of it. But I think the book is good because it helps you digest the concept better. So I'm still going to recommend it. Plus, again, if you own the book, you get the software for free. So that's my other reason. But that book is How to Write a Novel Using the Snowflake Method by Randy Ingermanson. Now, this book is not Writer's Digest. Most of my books I've been covering are Writer's Digest or a brand name publisher. I've been doing a lot of the traditional published writing books on here on this channel. This, I believe, is the first self-published book that I'm covering because it's that good. And again, it's not that the book is good; it's the model is good. I like the way of writing a story through this. So the book is essentially it's about the Three Little Pigs. No, yeah, sorry. I'm still thinking I've been doing a lot of reading this summer. One of my books is about that. Sorry, it's not this one. This is about Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Sorry. And Goldilocks decides that she wants to write a novel, so she goes to this writing course and a writing seminar, and she learns that the pantsing method is not for her. She learns the plotting method is not for her. Kind of like, again, similar to what Lisa Crone says in her Story Genius book. If you're not a pantser, if you're not a plotter, well, try this. Well, the Snowflake Method is another. Try this. It's a method that doesn't fit either plotter or pantser. It's like it mixes them. And the concept behind it is, and if we open to the first page here. Right here, based on this fractal method. So Randy Ingermanson, he's a scientist of some type. What is he? Is he a technician? It's on his website, you can read it. But he came up with this idea where you start with a triangle, and then you add the details and make a star, and then you add more details, and you create this thing. And you keep on going 10 levels deep. And what the whole premise is you start at the premise or the concept, like we did with story engineering. But then you develop that into your tagline, and then you develop that into your paragraph synopsis, and then you develop that, and you keep on going until you end up with a scene. Like, I think step 9 is write a scene, and then 10 is finish the book, I believe. There's 10 steps to it. But what the book does is the book models the structure through the story of Goldilocks learning how to write, and we get to actually see her go through her challenges. She complains a lot. She's insecure. She doesn't think this is ever going to work, and she's basically like most writers. Every time they sit down and write a book, it's actually pretty genius. I know I've read criticisms on it where they think the whole story is really in the last 20 pages. I actually agree with that. You really could just read the last 20 pages and get everything you need out of the book. But the thing about the whole book, the story, is it it gives you an illustration of putting it to practice, so that you're not lost when you go into the process of putting it together. And so this is why I recommend the book, again, for the fact that it's free software, but also because it really does help you see a character putting the process to work and writing her own book. And and it brings in a little bit of the the fairy tale into the story. So you have the big bad wolf is an agent in the story. The little bear, baby bear, he's like the writing instructor for this particular method. His parents are the servers and plotters. The story. Then you have the little pig, and that's where I got the little pig in there. But there's different characters. The old woman who lives in the shoe or has the coffee pot. She's like the character who wants to write the story about the man who drinks coffee, and like all she does is talk about her cupboards or her shoe or whatever it is that her story is. Like there's like no story in it. She just wants the scene. And so it kind of goes into the archetype too of the character writer who writes according to the limitation. The writers who never grow out of their little bubbles that they're in. And it's all very interesting. But I want to recommend this book because it's a short read. It's like it's 200 pages, but again, it's not like your traditional writing book where it's like chapter by chapter is instruction. It's a story that teaches you through the story elements, through the story beats, and then it summarizes them for you at the end. So I think it's a good all-purpose book to have if you want to learn an alternative writing structure that may be accessible if you're not finding it easy to break in through plotting or pantsing. This one I find really fits my style well because I do like to know what I'm getting myself into before I get into it, but I often also just want to write the book. I don't really want to outline. I just want to get to the end. And so this is like the best of both worlds. So I do highly recommend it. I told you it was a two-parter. He has a second book in the series. This is how to write a Dynamite scene using the Snowflake Method. This is basically step 9 of the Snowflake Method. And it's an entire book about step 9. This is essentially reminds you that every scene in your book is a mini story of its own. It has its own little mini structure. And so this tells you how to stick to that mini structure. This one is less of a story and more of an instructional, if I recall. And it covers the same basic stories like Godfather and a few others in here. Outlander is in here. But it talks about the makeup of a scene where you have the active and reactive scenes, or what they call the scene and sequel, where there's 3 parts to the reactive scene, 3 parts to the active scene and 3 parts to the reactive scene. So there's 6 elements to a scene and it's in total. And it goes in the premise of the action is what you need for the scene to move forward, but then you have reaction is what gives the scene its purpose. So it's a constant duology of elements coming into play to make your story work. So this goes back to what we were talking about, in earlier installments, where the structure matters. The characters matter. Everything that happens matters. But what's most important, if we go back to the story trump structure, is to keep your reader engaged. Keep your reader focused on, or rather not focused, but enjoying the experience of the scenes you're giving. And for that to work, you have to, still have a structure in there that the reader is familiar with, so that they know it's going somewhere, and that they care about where it's going. Okay, so I do highly recommend checking out Randy Ingermanson's books. Both of them are good. They're print on demand, so they won't run out. It's, again, self-published. It's, in my opinion, I think the worst formatted of all the books I'm covering, because it's not professional. You have there's subheadings that really should be on the next page. So there's some structural or not structural. There's formatting things that I wish were different. But it's not about the formatting, it's about the content, and I think the content's solid. So I do think that you should check these out. Put them on your bookshelf and read them. I would say this one's less urgent than the others, because this is, I think, more for if the others aren't working for you. You should honestly keep to what works for you. But I find that this works for me, and so I definitely think that it's worth mentioning. One last point is if you've seen my Y Writer videos, I recorded them a year ago, but they're my most popular videos on this channel. If you've seen any of those, the Snowflake Method, in my opinion, is compatible with YWriter, because YWriter also has sections in there about the active and reactive scenes. And if you are somebody who likes to plan your stuff out, and you don't necessarily want to use something that's Spartan looking like the Snowflake Method software, the software is really bare bones, but it's the way it's laid out, I think, is effective. YWriter is also a little bare bones, but I think it gives you more to work with. If you find that you like YWriter, you can probably apply what you got out of the Snowflake Method into the YWriter program. It won't be an easy transition, but it can be done. Because again, the principles that they teach you here, I'm pretty sure the developer of YWriter has taken them to heart. So check it out if you haven't already. Right now it's version 7, it's most recent. But I still think if you get these books, get the program. It's really useful, and by now you should be in a momentum or a regimen where you're actually getting some work done. And I think that this is a good way, if you're still not sure where your book's going, put it to practice. And if you want to start your next book, use these systems to put it to practice. So by now I hope you are putting these things to practice. But yeah, once again, it's Snowflake Method and the scene Snowflake. Randy Ingermanson is the author. He has a website where you get the software, and his clause is you must have the book if you're going to get the software, because he's not charging for it. It used to be $100 software, but his rationale is he wants you to learn and he wants you to use it, so he's giving it to you for free as long as you own the copy. And you can get the ebook. This is one of the few books on my bookshelf that I say go either way. If you'd rather have the ebook, that's fine. I have a few ebooks that I want to recommend at some point. I can't physically hold them if I don't have them, but this is one of those books I think you could do the ebook and it'd be just as fine. But I definitely think that you should at least have a version of it. So anyway, that's it for today. Next week we're going to do Robert McKee's story. It's a brick one I haven't finished yet, to be honest, but it's one I still think is valuable. So we're going to talk about that. So come back and bring your coffee with you, because it's a big one. But hope you have a good afternoon, good week. Come back next Friday, 10 a.m. for that book, or after work. Make sure you like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more like this. Make sure you leave comments below so that I know how much you enjoy this. And let me if you have books you want me to cover in the future, just put it in the comments. And if I have it on the bookshelf, maybe we can do it for season 2. Depends on when this is like our 10th week. I may actually be writing season 3 by now, by the time you watch this. But yeah, just bring comments. If you have things you want your other people to read, short things, first chapters, whatever. If you want to post a link to your website or to your Wattpad in the comments below, and just let us know what you're working on. And if you want to get some feedback, go ahead and post that at the bottom. We can make this set into a little miniature writing community. It's all good. But yeah, I hope you're getting something out of this. So come back next week and we'll cover Robert McKee's story. Okay, until then, have a good one.